Y'all say park, passion, passion. We in the fucking building.
All right, so let's get back to it. How we was talking before. So why do you think? Because I have, of course, an answer to this, but I'm curious. What made you, as an artist, because you're obviously an artist first. Like you didn't start just throwing shows. You started rapping, right?
Yeah.
So what is the reason that you were like, all right, I've done other people's shows. I should throw my own show. Like what got you to do that?
Impatience was one. The whole pay to play gig was 2. 3 was just not organized. You get booked for a show, they tell you you're going on at 8, you don't go on until 10. And imagine if I'm in the middle of the lineup and the guy after me or the 2-3 people after me get told, now you got a crowd full of upset people, saying that's artists or they're people or whatever, because they told them, I'm going on 8:30. They rushed to get there, and then all of a sudden they waited there for 2.5 hours. So my thing was like, I was going to Sub T on 606 Tuesdays. I think you're familiar with it. Shadow Master, Jory, Rubio, all them boys, EYE.
Infamous,
yeah, legendary spot. So then I started going there, and then I started asking them. I'm like I think you said it earlier. You said in episode 1, you were like, you just start asking the booking managers, like, hey, what does it take to book this, all that, and like at first you kind of like timid because you're like, well, will they take me serious, whatever? But then in my mind, I'm like, like if you don't do it, then if I don't do it, then who else gonna do it, type thing. Like, you know what I'm saying?
I think that's a song. I think that's a song.
It is. It's called Who Else? But like I started thinking like that. And I'm just like, well, man, like we might as well. And if anything, the first real, we threw like parties and stuff, but like the real first event we do was called Verbal Warfare. Okay. We threw it at Sub T, and it was a rap battle. It wasn't Eyes on the Prize. It was like 8 Mile
battle? Like,
freestyle battle.
Okay.
And then after that one, it was just like, well, what else can we do?
Anybody I know that was there, like a cool.
Nah, this is. Man, because back in the day, I used to go to Lily's Open Mic. Dude, it's crazy, bro. Like, I was trying to think about it the other day. I'm like, man, it's such a cloud because it's like I did so much, been through so many places, and it's just like, and then you randomly remember certain things and all that. But it was Sub T that really got my mind peaking to be like, okay, I want to throw my own shows. And then as I started throwing my own shows, then I realized I'm like, okay, you're in control. I'm not saying you almost have more power, but like, you almost could rise through the ranks faster because it's like, yo, I'm not only doing this for myself, I'm doing this for artist community that don't have a stage, because a lot of artists are, we get timid. We don't want to ask for a show, or like I said, the pay to play situation. Is pay to play good in some situations? Yeah, if it's worth it. If you could sell $2,000 worth of merch, if you only paid $500 to get on, you just made your money back plus more, whatever. But you got to know when that's right, how to do it, when to do it. But a lot of artists literally sit around and wait for someone to throw a show, wait for someone to throw a show, and then it's like when somebody announces it, then it's like throwing breadcrumbs, scraps to the wolves, like everybody's gonna attack and all that. So like by me being like, if I'm in control of the venue, then I can control my outcome. Now my outcome, the scary part is like we talked about. You know what I'm saying, is like the failure of it, like being like labeled like, oh, this guy throw whack shows or whatever the case may be. But everyone starts somewhere. Everyone starts somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, no, I can really relate to all of that. The thing you were saying right there about pay to play, we can get in the whole. I'll break that my thoughts on that in a little bit, because I have look, I think it's a nuanced topic. I think sometimes people just make it so like black and white, like it's just yes or no. Like there's a nuance to it. I'm not saying no completely on those. Like I did a lot of pay to play stuff to get to where I had to get to. So I would love to go through the breakdown of all those, because I feel like those things, like there's just like a mystique, and this is what we kind of try to do with the Q&A at the monthly show, is like there seems to be like a mystique around certain things that people don't want to openly talk about because it's not that cool and shit. Like I get it, but at the same time, but
don't act like you haven't been through it or thought about going through it.
Yeah. And even when you were talking right now about the time slot things, I'm thinking about our own show, because our own show, a lot of times the times get pushed back, but we don't promise time slots.
We're not 2 hours back.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
and we don't
15, 20 minutes, like okay, but like you're not getting pushed back 2 hours.
And our show is different. I try to, like I say, it's an open room. I want everybody to be there hanging out with each other. So I think it's different than if you're going to a venue. Like when I had my album release show at the Anodyne Coffee in Milwaukee, like we had, it was 3 acts. Everybody did like 30 or an hour, and it was like 8, 9, 10. Like those should be on. Like if you're spending $20 to go to a show, you should be around that time. But yeah, that's definitely, those are pretty much the same reasons, by the way, for me being impatient. And it goes to your point about saying like, sometimes artists don't want to ask for shit, they want to be asked, right? Because like, look, you wouldn't be doing this if you weren't like also looking for a level of attention from your art too. Like,
yeah, of course.
So you do sometimes, and I'll speak for myself. Like, Actually, a podcast is a good example. Like, I want to be on some people's podcasts, and sometimes I'm just like, well, do I just wait till they ask me? No. Usually, what you got to do is send them a message and just be like, hey, if you ever want me on the podcast, I'd love to be on.
Because you got to think about how many other people are hitting them up. They're not just gonna, maybe they do want you on there, but they're already mixed up with everything else.
That, and also you got to think about, like, they do want guests too. Like, so sometimes, like, look, if it matches up, the best way to do it is to actually shoot the shot and just, like, actually, you don't have to be. I never approach DMing in a way where I'm like, yo, can you do this for me? Like, I always almost am like, I try to
It's
do
a
like,
barter. It's like, I'm
Yeah,
giving you my time, you're giving me your time. Let's make some
Yeah,
raw
and-
content.
and, like-
or you've been following me, I've been following you. Like, it's nothing new. I'm not a stranger to what's going on.
Yeah, and you want to make sure everything lines up so you're not just
Yeah,
like,
of course.
whatever. But I guess I'm veering off a little bit. But that same mentality comes with shows where you're like, I'm gonna wait for them to be on, wait for them to ask me, whatever. But that you'll be waiting forever. Like, sometimes you do have to just like put your name out there and be like, I know for me, like, a lot of our show bookings, you know this, like, yeah, people DM me and I try to get them in, but the most efficient way to get on our show is you meet me in person at our show.
Yep.
Because I book our show through my notepad on my phone. So, like, I mean, and like through us, word of mouth, whatever, we talk to each other about it. But, like, I can't tell you how many times at a show I'll just be like, yo, we haven't had you on yet. Let's look 2 months in ahead. When do you want to be on? That is the most efficient way. So that just says you got to be out here. You got to be out here doing stuff. But these are all the reasons that I started the show too, pretty much. Like, I had done all the showcases that were pay to play, but in a way that just like didn't feel right. You're like, why am I'm paying $30 to be on this show when there's like 100 people here? Everybody's like just here for themselves. Like, nobody's really here for the community. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
Like, I did a bunch of those that didn't feel
It's almost
right.
like to fluff your resume to be like, oh, I did this, I did that. Like, when I did those shows, like when I did the pay to play shows, it wasn't necessarily, some of them were like you pay, but you get like a certain percentage, but it's not a big percentage that you get back. So it's like either you're breaking even or you lose a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's just like, what are you willing to do? And my thing was just like, I'm gonna throw the best damn show I have. I'm gonna get this experience on stage. I'm not really gonna worry about all that extra shit. Like, you gotta, as an artist, if you got on a stage and it's the biggest stage you've ever been on, like, you need to soak that energy up. You need to take that with you, because now, like, you're taking that with you.
Yeah.
Now they're like, no, the next stage I'm gonna be bigger and bigger. But artists don't look at it like that. Like, a lot of artists get like down about pay to play, because like you said, it is a double-edged sword. But if you're gonna pay to play, make sure it's worth it. Make sure everything lines up. And like you said, are they there? Are you gonna perform for people who don't care and just sipping their drink, or did the promoter throw a really good show?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, I'm giving you opportunity. Now, if you don't capture them, that's on you.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's exactly that. And the thing is, now that since we run shows, like, I know exactly why you would charge. I mean, I know the things that you need to cover, the sound, the DJ, the security. Like, I know that the costs that need to be covered, so I get that. But like, so if it's different, if it's a contest, right? If there's an opportunity involved, if there's something that like you could win, I view that completely
Like, if they
different.
had their eyes on the prize.
Yeah, you go, look at and I actually view that completely different. Even with like how Spin Bars does those events, like I view those differently, because there is a real opportunity that it can really affect your career.
Yeah.
So I think that matters, and that's how you should look at even regular standard pay to play shows. Is, does this line up with the kind of fan base that would be beneficial for my career?
Yep.
Like, and also you just need stage time. I think early on you just need stage time. So maybe go do open mics. Maybe like try to hold your budget down if you can and just do open mics, because you need to get on stage and be doing this shit.
You need to test out the material.
Yeah, like you don't go in the game without shooting some warm up shots. Like, you gotta be playing. Right?
All right. So now we said that. Now let's talk about how we get these venues, how we do our things, because you've done it. I know we talked about before Iowa. You got there. You got Chicago. You're in Milwaukee. I'm over here. I'm over here. I'm over there. What's like some tactics we can give some people to be like, hey, this is how you approach booking manager or reaching out to a venue. My first advice is like, just be you. Don't try to be overly professional, trying to look up templates. Like, dude, be like, hey, I'm so and so. I'm looking to come to your city. Just start the conversation and let's see what you can strike from it. I feel a lot of people overreach with that first response, or that first initial contact.
I actually like 100% agree with that. You don't have to give your whole life story in that first message, but there's a couple actual. If we're just talking about actual tactics, like real implementable goal, like things you could do when you're sending an email to. I'll just call it an email. If you're sending an email to a venue about it now. it's also like if you know the preferred method of contact, that's helpful
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Because some places nowadays really do prefer a DM. It's weird, but it's
Yeah,
worked.
yeah.
It's
But
worked.
it's the faster email.
Yeah, so like if that works for you, then you reach out, just be like, hey, I love the venue. Would love to set something up in the future, and then maybe from there you take the business stuff probably to an email or something like that.
Or even calling like my manager, like we've called places and like a lot of places appreciate that because you get I just booked Portland, Maine, the Cavern. Shout out to Cavern. We're doing it either June 22nd or 23rd up there, Eyes on the Prize. But that guy asked me if he could call me. And I was like, yeah, of course. But so I think that like me and him having that conversation, it just made it that much more close. Like he hears me, he hears my vision. I was able to be in the moment. So it's like, be ready for.
Well, yeah,
whatever
that
it
goes
is.
to preferred method of contact. So that must have been his method.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So I think finding a good way to get in contact with the venue or however you're doing it, if it's a promoter or something. But what I would suggest is this: if you're gonna send an email, have either a press kit or a one sheet. I have a one sheet, which I think is very useful. So if you're interested, just go to onesheet.com. You can see it. It's basically a press kit that has all your stuff and like your resume and all that. Very simple. So it's just one link. They don't need too much. They can get everything on there. And then in the message, what I would do is go on their calendar on their website, look, see if they have a calendar and see if there's any open dates. Pick an actual date that you would consider. Pick one or two. Probably one is good, a good way to start. But even if you do two, pick those dates, throw them out there. Those might change. They might be like, hey, those dates don't work.
Because the fact that you're throwing an actual date at them shows them that you're serious.
And there's an
about it.
actual action for them. Like I think that I honestly think that is a really important thing. Is if you throw a real date, they'll be like, hey, that date doesn't even work. Let's talk about a different one.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh yeah, we don't have anything that night. Let's consider it. So I feel like that's an important part of it. Those are my two kind of like big tips. I'm like, get a one sheet or a
that's
resume
good.
and then a date.
No, I like that because if they respond to you saying that the date's not available, that means they actually looked
yeah,
at
exactly.
their calendar
Exactly.
to tell you that.
Exactly.
So now you got their attention to be like, okay, they'll hit you back with these days are up, but you keep going.
Yeah, and also you should have an intention when you're hitting up these venues anyways. Like if you're just saying like, oh, I just want a show in like general, that's too generalized. You need to have an idea of like, am I setting up a tour or am I just like whatever? Like and they want an idea too. They don't want they don't
want to walk into it blindly. They need to know what you're doing from the minute you walk in the door to the minute you leave. Even before, what are you gonna do for promo? Are you gonna send us a flyer? Are you gonna do this? Like they take that thing serious because at the end of the day, they got employees coming. Is the bartender gonna make money?
Exactly.
Is the door? Are you gonna be able to pay the door guy? Are you gonna be able to? Now let's get into the next thing: fees. When it comes to venues, I'll tell you what I run into.
Yeah.
It's shout out to the venues that do this 80-20 split at the door.
Yeah.
So I don't have to pay any deposit, nothing. All they ask is I collect 80, they collect 20.
Usually after a certain number, right?
No. Maybe this is my experience.
Yeah.
They tell me from the get-go, first customer to last customer, 80% goes to me, 20% goes to them. That's the deal that they made. And I've done this with a handful of venues. Couple in Chicago, but more I ran into that deal more as I traveled.
Yeah.
Then I ran into places where they're just like, pay the sound guy, you're good.
Yeah.
100%. But their flip side is we're not working door, we're not collecting money for you. Like so now you got to pick up the slack on that. Who's gonna do that for you? I've had other venues where it's like it's this much, and you got to pay it fully up front.
Yeah, I don't.
Before you even go there. I've had multiple other venues be like, you pay if it's this much, you pay half as a deposit. And then, at the end of the night, you pay the other half. So those are, like, the main ones I run into. And, like, I tell people, like, if you're going to rock with a venue that's going to do the half up front and half later or the full deposit, who are you throwing that show with? Because if you're throwing it with 4 other people, or let's say we're traveling, and 4 of us are traveling and we get this venue, I'm going to ask the other 3 people that I'm traveling with, hey, this venue cost X amount of dollars. If we all split it, we can make our money back so we break even, and then whatever we make after, boom.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, those are like, I have one other option to add to that, but I pretty much do always now. I avoid anything where money has to come up front to the venue. I do not.
Why?
like that
Why do you say that though?
Because I don't think there's a need for that. I think if you
But
build,
is it a venue you know or a venue you've never been to or you've been? Going there
so my
repeatedly?
experience in most of the venues when I do it, if I'm booking like a tour, say I'm booking like I want to be on the bill. We're not even talking about our showcases or whatever. Just I want to be on the bill. I'm trying to go to let's call Anodyne because that's where I did my album release show. So They are very generous. They're 90-10, but it's after 150 or 175 or something like
Okay,
that,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is pretty standard actually, but it's usually 80-20.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of places I'll see is 80-20 after 150 or something. And so what that means is the first $150 made at the door is there to cover their, whether it be sound or door or whatever that's covering. That's covering the venue's ass. And then after that, it's an 80-20 split.
Yeah.
I like the 90. I mean, 90-10 is fantastic. I think
I
that's
said 80-20.
you said 80-20, but the Anodyne
you're
did
saying you see a 90-10.
Anodyne did 90-10.
That's really good. That's really good.
85-15 is whatever. In that range is reasonable. I think the reason that I wouldn't do a upfront cost is because they're worried you're not even going to make the money to support the show, to have the show be worth their time,
Yeah.
right? But that's not. You have to, if they're gonna book you, they have to trust that the show is gonna happen how you're
Or
saying
is it a quantity thing where like I throw so many shows that if I'm booking these guys, and even if they throw a bum show, I still get this amount, this amount. Every show I'm getting this amount versus trusting you and be like, well, if my cut was this, it went from here to here to here to here to here. Because I can imagine how much, you know what I'm saying, a venue like, shout out to Joe Rogan, the Comedy Mothership, but like, he even says in his podcast and everything, he's like, as long as the club breaks even or even lose a little bit, he's like, I don't care, because he has the pockets to do that. Not everybody who has a music venue has the capability to do that. So I can understand it being like, hey, this is why I'm charging, but there's so many factors to it.
From the artist perspective, I would just say this: if you run into a venue that says, "Hey, we want to take a deposit and then we do a split with you at the door," or whatever. My personal opinion would be you could probably find a venue that doesn't.
Yeah. Wait, because you said a deposit plus a split. No,
whatever. Yeah,
it's
no,
either
so
to me, it's either we do the split or we do the deposit.
Well, okay. So that's essentially functioning as a rental, which I think is okay if you're gonna take on those.
Well, because if I rent it, then anything I charge at the door, if I want to let 30 people in for free, that is none of your concern because I paid you the.
I think that's
fee.
different. Like I think for an album release party where I might do that at a venue. I might do that because you might cover the cost. Be like, I want to throw a free show. I want to do something.
But as long as the venue gets paid, your staff gets paid. Cool. But if the venue's looking at you like, well, why are you letting them? Like, dude, you told me the rental fee was this much.
They should always have an option. Venues should always have an option for a booking option and a rental option. A rental option should be handled differently.
That's a good idea.
A booking option should be like,
we'll do that at the Passion Park venue.
Yeah, for real, right? When we get there. But yeah, because they have music bookers that work for them. You know what I mean? Like that's their job is to trust that they're booking people that are going to draw or whatever. So in my opinion, like do a split after that. Try to get every artist taken care of. That's the best way to handle that situation. It's tough. There's no right answer to any of it, really. You want to sell tickets. You want to be able to sell tickets. That's the kind of thing.
But then it goes deeper. Now we go deeper. So it's like, is it a competition? Is it your release party? Is it a music video release party? Is it an open mic? Is it this? Like the concept of it, I think changes the outcome of it.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to get from each one? And then when you're touring, like, what are you willing to do on tour? Because it's like if this is your first or second tour, your first 3 or 4, I would say 5 tours, you should rely more on merchandise to make you money, and you should rely on networking to get you further because now you can go back to that city and let's say, hey, Friday night I'm doing this more intimate show, but Saturday I got booked at this bigger venue because last time I connected with, so-and-so and so-and-so. So it's like networking to me is one of the most powerful things. I've been able to go places and meet people for the first time that I never met because of someone that I networked. Shout out to Ivan L. Shout out to Ivan L. He hooked me up with T. Will in Texas, and now I'm going to San Antonio tomorrow. And I'm about to meet this guy for the first time.
And let's be real. Let's be real about this. As independent artists at like a growing level, but still like independent artists, like it. To take all the risk about saying I'm going to book a tour and I'm the main name on the bill every single time and I have to take on all those responsibilities plus you're paying for travel plus you're paying for a hotel or whatever, like that's a really big responsibility. So like the easier and more like efficient way to tour as an artist, in my opinion right now, is to kind of do what you do very regularly, which is you market with these other shows. Hey, you guys can come to my city, I can go to your city, hop on your show, because there's already going to be people there. You're not losing out on booking costs or anything like that. But in this situation, merchandise is crucial, or at least something that you can send people to, because you're not making anything off ticket sales really. But until you get to the point where you feel like you can sell a decent amount of tickets in every city you go to, you're probably your best bet might be just getting from.
And another thing I like to give to artists a piece of wisdom is that I went from telling people to follow me to being like, what do you listen to music on? Oh, is it Spotify? Is it Apple? 100%. I'd be like, okay, if you're on Apple, download my latest 2 projects to your library. So now I'm forever in their library. If you're on Spotify, follow me as an artist. So whatever the case, title, whatever YouTube, whatever you listen to. To me, I've been doing that for the past year, and I feel like that has just increased my stock so much. It's helped me so much because now it's just like, yeah, I'm not worried because I had an Instagram page for so long, but then I felt like I had it so long that half these people don't even care about because you got fans, you got followers. But I made a new one. I'm like, no, I'm gonna start fresh, but I'm not necessarily starting fresh because I've been doing it where, hey, I may only have this much following on social media, but how come all these people got me in the libraries across the U.S., overseas, and now we're traveling? Because I see a lot of people, I got this many followers, that followers, but you can't even leave the city. You don't even know how to leave the city.
Yeah, and your followers probably aren't even seeing your shit now with how the algorithm
Exactly.
is working. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, we want people to listen to our music, right? So like, I do the same thing at shows. I'm like, yeah, what do you listen to music on? Or like, what kind of music do you listen to? Like, I always like started with like a music question because like I think that's what I want the goal to be. Is like
To me, like
listen to music. Like,
my IG is an appetizer and the entree is like the Spotify, whatever. Because but my
whereas that's not always the case. There's a lot of people.
yeah,
who
it's
flip,
the opposite.
flip.
It's the very opposite.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like we've. Like if there's any questions that artists have about shows, like feel free because I think we're pretty open about like how we feel about this stuff. And like I do want to be clear that I don't want to say like whoever's running their own shows and doing showcases and like I hope everybody has the right intentions. I try to look at people like with the optimistic point of view. I don't want to say everybody's running a scam in this industry. Obviously we've dealt with a bunch of it. And that's why we end up doing what we do because we've run into a lot of them. But there are a lot of good people doing what we do and no approach is not necessarily the right approach. We have just taken our approach. And I think it's helped us grow dramatically. And frankly, we should all be collaborating. Obviously, competition matters, but we should be collaborating to grow.
Hip hop is a sport.
Yeah.
But you still got pickup games and you still got all that stuff. When it's time for the playoffs, I'm saying, okay, I get you.
We just want to make the best art possible at the end of the day. At least how I feel is I want to make the best art possible. So like that might include working with new people.
What I also think artists need to realize is that it's okay to do like every kind of show in between. It's okay to do a show just for the artists that are there because nobody showed up.
Yeah.
It's going to teach you something. It's okay to do a show for a jam-packed, sold-out crowd, a crowd that's in between, a crowd that's not paying attention to you, a crowd that you have to force their attention. You have to be able to go through every walk of a show in order to be a superstar, in my opinion. Because the person you like the most who's a superstar, whatever the case may be, they'd have been through every kind of show you can imagine.
Yeah. And this is kind of why, with that being said, we're going to wrap up. This is kind of why we do the third Friday of every month at the Passion Park Experience. We open the show. I always do a set.
Yeah.
It was a goal of mine. I was hard-headed about this with you. I said,
I remember.
No matter what, I don't care if nobody's in there or whatever. I am opening the show so that whoever is a fan of me long-term, you can always know. If you want to see me in Milwaukee, third Friday of the month, 9 o'clock, I'll be opening, and then you come right after me, and we just like, that's the set.
We warm up the stage.
Yeah, exactly.
We set the energy so high. It's like, yo, we got you.
But part of that is also to show, like, look, we're not just saving us for when the biggest crowd's there. Like, we're like, there's all sorts of different performances, and they all matter. They all matter. But yeah, you feel good?
I feel good.
Well, thank you for tuning into another episode of the Passion Park Podcast. I am David Lopez. Let's get it. But I still got it all to see. Now we ball, but what's involved? It took years, I let y'all see. I seen a penny.